Today we're going to be doing a stamp design, which is a form of printmaking, and we're going to be talking about positive and negative space. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a small piece of paper and you're going to make a shape out of it. It could be the letter of your name, or it could be a heart. It can be anything you want. I'm going to fold my paper in half just to make it a little bit easier to make a symmetrical heart shape. And then I'm going to use my scissors and cut it out. And I'm not too worried about staying on the line. I think I want to make it a little bit wider at the top. So then I have my heart shape, and I also have the cutout of the heart shape. So the cutout is considered the negative space because that would be the air. Air goes in that area. So that's the negative space. The positive is the actual heart shape. Then I'm going to take my pencil and the eraser end I'm going to be using to stamp some watercolor on there. So you're going to take out your watercolor kit and your cup. Get a little bit of water in your cup and dip the eraser end of your pencil in the water, and then put some of that water in one of the colors and kind of mix it around. And then you want to press down hard on your stencil so that the paint doesn't go underneath. So you don't want it to be too wet or the water will take it underneath. And that's okay if that happens. Sometimes you can create something interesting even with a bleed that happens underneath your shape. So I'm just working with one color right now. And then I'm gonna just rinse my brush. Well, it's not a brush. I want to call it a brush. I'm gonna rinse off the tip of my eraser and go into a different color. I'm going to go further away from my shape now. And as the eraser dries, my stamp begins to dry out, I get smaller kinds of dots, which makes it more interesting because it gives variety to the pattern. Okay, so now I'm going to use a different color. And I'm using colors that would be next to each other on the color wheel. That's called analogous colors when they're next to each other. Like blue and green are next to each other and blue and purple are next to each other. So they make a nice color combination. They work well together. So when I'm finished with this, I could take it off. But if you want, you can also do stamping with your finger. So I'm going to try a little bit of that just to add variety to the size of my stamp shapes. So I'm not going to put too many. And it's important to make sure that you're touching the edge of your heart shape because that's what helps to make it look like a heart when you take the stencil off of your picture. I'm going to lift that up. You can see that here it bled in a little bit, and that's okay. So then I'm going to clean my finger off. Sometimes the watercolor will stain your finger, but it'll come off when you wash your hands a few times. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my negative space, my negative heart shape, and I'm going to put it in another area of the picture. And it's a good idea to let this dry before you place it down, or you may smear that. So I'm going to be careful because I'm not waiting to not place it over what I've already painted. And I think now I'm going to change the color, and I'm trying to clean off my eraser end. You can rub it on a scrap piece of paper to try and get more of the color off if you're going to be switching colors. So I'm going to try something on the other spectrum of the color wheel. So I'm using orange. I'm going to use orange and yellow to start. And they're also next to each other on the color wheel. Oh, I want you to think about what would happen if I didn't use colors next to each other on the color wheel. What if I used colors that are across from each other on the color wheel? Like orange and blue are across from each other. If I put orange and blue together when they're wet, I'm going to end up with sort of a brown color, because when you mix complements together, they often turn a darker, they turn dark or they turn brown. So sometimes you want that to happen, but in this case, I want my colors to be bright, so I'm not going to use the complements in the same heart or the same shape. I'm switching to yellow. I probably should have started with yellow because I have a little bit of orange still on the eraser. And then I'm going to switch now to red. And I think I'll just do red on 1/2 of the heart. And then I'm going to use my finger to get some bigger dots, just for a variety of the shapes. And I lift that off, and now I've got the positive heart and the negative heart. And you can do as many shapes as you want on the paper until you fill up at least 50% of the page. If you like the white space, you can leave it. I have one that's finished over here, and you can even take and spread some of the paint when it's wet, like these little streaks. I did dots outside and then just pulled the paint through. I'll do one on this one so you can see it. So if I go like this, I can pull that and make kind of little streaks. That's not really considered stamping or printing, but it can add a little bit of interest and tie your positive and negative shape to each other by connecting them a little bit. So go ahead and play with it. When you're all done, you want to rinse off your eraser, rinse off your finger, and dry it on a paper towel, or use a scrap piece and try and get as much of the color off the end of your eraser as you can. And you might want to be careful about using this eraser later on when you're drawing to actually erase, because sometimes it will not work properly or not actually erase. Have fun!